and welcome to Forte Catholic. This is your host, Taylor Schroll. Friends, I have lost my voice. It is gone. Someone stole it, and they ran on it, and they punched it, and that person's name was Father Anthony Sciarappa. Why did you steal my voice, priest?
Wait. First, before we get to your blatant lies, knowing that you have a radio show to do, which requires you speaking, why did you go for the intro where you scream? That was the most painful looking thing I've ever seen and heard.
You've never known pain, priest.
Wow. I think there's like a hierarchy of needs here for the radio show podcast thing. I feel like the intro scream does not outweigh like the rest of the talking you have to do.
No, it absolutely does. The
okay.
The scream is actually all anyone cares about on this show.
Well, you're the expert. I'm just here as a co-host, so I don't know.
Most people are probably agreeing with you, but
but they're not experts. They don't have a radio show. They don't have a podcast. What do they know?
What do they know? What do they know? And this is insight into anytime someone asks Father Anthony a question. What do you know? I'm an expert. And it just walks off.
Exactly.
Oh, man, Father Anthony. It was quite the weekend.
Oh, was it?
Both personally and like just everyone in general. Like this might have been the biggest pop culture weekend ever. Like legitimately ever.
I'm glad you said pop culture weekend, because I was just thinking about like how 2 weeks ago it was Easter, and I feel like that's a bigger weekend.
I mean, that was only one event though.
Oh, right. You're right. It was only one event. That's the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Right.
But
right.
A lot of other stuff happens this past
reruns.
weekend.
It's all reruns.
Yeah. Forget about Divine Mercy Sunday, by the way. That also happened this weekend.
Right.
Let's just go to the pop culture stuff.
Not in pop culture at all. They've already heard Divine Mercy. To them, it's over. This is releasing much later than this. So, I'm gonna need some Divine Mercy after this. And actually, like this whole idea of this pop culture weekend. So what happened this weekend? We had Avengers Endgame, this culmination of this story that's been going on for...
I'm super nervous that you want to talk about this.
No spoilers, I promise.
Okay.
We're actually talking about not giving spoilers. We'll do our spoiler cast in like a month. We'll let everybody know that it's coming. Anytime there's a big movie, we do a spoiler cast. This is not it. We always have like a preliminary conversation around the movie, and then we'll talk about it later. So Avengers... Endgame, like legitimately, this movie franchise started when I was in high school. That tells you how long ago this was. Like that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was this huge culmination of this story. The Game of Thrones, like biggest battle in television history was on Sunday. Like people can think what they want about the show, but it's like, that is true. Like it's the biggest battle ever on television or a movie. We had the NFL draft all weekend as well. Like legitimately, like these huge storylines all happening on this weekend. And of course, the most important of all, the St. Joseph's Track Team Regional Track Meet, the biggest event of them all.
That's the one I heard about in the news. I didn't hear about these other ones.
Right, exactly.
How about St. Joseph's Track Meet?
It's the reason I lost my voice. I was yelling both for and at the children on the track team.
I thought you were going to yell against the other team.
Oh,
like the other runners, you're like, run slower, please trip. Hey, look out.
I didn't say those things out loud, Father Anthony.
But
I may or may not have prayed it silently, and it may or may not have actually worked. I was really impressed.
Wait, were you cursing the children? Were you putting curses on the children?
I mean, we've all heard the story.
Praying for bad things to happen is a curse, and that's bad.
No, it's not, because we know this. I know this of all people. Because there's a prophet in the Old Testament that the children are making fun of him, and he calls down a curse upon them, and the she-bears come and maul the children. That's essentially what I did. Nobody just saw the bears. The kid just tripped. Totally biblical, my life is. So, okay, the meet went very well, and there's a couple things I want to talk about this weekend. One is people achieving their dreams. I saw that both like personally at the track meet, like legitimately, like I lost my voice just with these like primal yelling when these kids that I've been with for 3 years, like there are two of these kids, like my superstars, my captains that have been with me since pretty much day one of me coaching track. And like we went from these young kids to now like they're going to get gold medals at the state meet next week. Like
that's cool.
It's insane, man. And like I love, like I personally get to see their hard work. I get to see like because I'm making it happen. Like they're throwing up, they're passing out, they're doing all of these things like to work hard these last few months. And then this kid who literally never says a word, like was supposed to get second place, gets first place, and is just like pounding his chest, like these like just primal, just like rah, you know, like I'm so proud of these kids. I love it so much. And I mean, it's just super exciting. And at the same time, like, you're not an NFL fan, are you? You're not like a real man?
Not particularly, no.
Yeah, not a real man. That's what I thought.
Oh, is that how we're going to define masculinity now?
Yes. NFL over WWE and hockey for sure. I just had to take it. I just took an entire shot at clerically speaking.
Yeah, you just took a shotgun blast.
With a shotgun, you don't have to hit with every bullet, just a few of them.
Yeah.
And I think I landed a few. So the NFL draft. It's been a thing for forever, you know, people, it's fun, but it's like, there's so many like mock drafts. Everybody kind of knows what's going to happen, but there was something new that like the television networks did, the NFL network that was showing this. Have you ever achieved any of your dreams, Father Anthony?
Yeah.
Do tell.
I'm a priest.
When did that dream begin for you?
High school.
Man, you are right. I am the expert on radio. I ask tremendous questions, and you're just like, yes.
I'm just waiting for you to tell me my dream isn't a dream. This is I don't know what to say.
Wow, you're like, I haven't even done anything, and you're already like...
I'm already getting real defensive. Whose fault is that? I don't know.
Don't hit me, says the guy who was just shot by a shotgun. So, I love watching people achieve their dreams. I saw it at the regional meet, but then like, yeah, it's cool like seeing people go up and they get their hat from their new team, but there was something new this year that they did. Like after they got drafted and they had all the pomp and circumstance, they took these guys, these like grown men, you know, these 21-year-old dudes that are 6'8", 400 pounds and 3% body fat. And they started showing videos of like, of two different things. One, like the owners calling these guys who have like sacrificed everything, hard work, sacrifice like, you know, fun, sacrifice relationships, sacrifice like focusing on other things to become the best at what they are. And then like legitimately the biggest man, he's become famous, like DJ Metcalf. He's like 3% body fat. Like you can see every like fiber of muscle in this guy's body. And this man gets the call from the Seattle Seahawks. And like probably the manliest looking man I've ever seen just breaks down in tears. And then like I'm tearing up because I'm like, well, if he's allowed to cry, then I'm allowed to cry, right? and then they did this other thing, Father Anthony, that absolutely wrecked me. It absolutely wrecked me.
Yeah.
There were these pre-recorded videos from like their family or their mom or their grandma or their grandpa of like congratulating their sons or, you know, whatever the relationship was, congratulating that man on achieving his dream. And like everyone is crying. Everybody is crying. Mom's crying, dad's crying, you know, the kids crying. And like I'm laying by myself in bed at like 4 p.m. crying. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Do you have any feelings or emotions?
I do have several. I mean, that's beautiful. I do remember that experience. It was actually, the crying for me didn't happen at my ordination. It happened at the night before, where I'm staying over at the seminary, and I'm just thinking about the 8 years of seminary and how hard it was, and everything that went on, and that it's all finally coming to an end. I finally get to be a priest. I remember just bawling my eyes out and calling one of my good friends about it, because it was just a relief and just to be happy with that. So I guess football is also important, so that's good too.
It's interesting that you say that it was the night before, because it was the same for me. Like for my vocation, for my wedding.
Mhm.
Like I didn't cry on the wedding day. I cried watching her walk down the aisle at the practice the night before. You know?
You're like, oh, it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. Yeah. So we have something else in common. We now have 4 things in common. Just 4. Our stunning good looks, our Catholicism,
correct,
crying before our vocation, and that we're both bad at video games. We have these 4 things in common.
No, yeah, that's good. That's a good list. That's how you make friends, right there.
Okay, let's spoil Avengers. I'm just kidding. We're not doing that. But
I have blocked people for just vaguely talking about the Avengers. I have yelled at Father Harrison, my co-host for my podcast and priest friend. I have blocked Ed from CNA Live because people are saying, "Oh, just kind of talking about it or saying whether or not you liked it. That's not a spoiler. Just don't, because 1, it's a slippery slope. Because then you'll begin to talk why you didn't like it, and you know what else has done this? Blevins. I've seen some of his posts where he's like vaguely implying stuff and like doing these vague spoilers. No, just be. Why do you have to just shut up for 2 weeks?
Right.
My day off. No, this is important. My day off is Wednesday. So when the movie comes out Thursday, I can't watch it. I have to wait a week. Just give me a week. That's all I've asked for. And people are still being selfish, and it's driving me crazy. Just don't talk about it for a week. That's not too much to ask.
The best spoiler I've heard was from.
What are you doing?
Wait, no, you'll like this. I promise. I'm not spoiling it. Like legitimately, the point of this segment is talking about not spoiling these things, because like I want God to cast down fire on these people. I had to change it because that was the nice way of saying my actual intentions. There was a junior high kid, like legitimately around, like junior high kids are the worst. Don't be around them. Like they're purposely spoiling the movie for people. They're the worst. But one kid said, like, because like I've heard people share spoilers, so I share other things that could possibly be true that are not real spoilers to confuse the people that heard it, so that they can actually like they don't know what's true. I'm being very helpful.
Oh, so you're just like throwing like smoke bombs everywhere, so people don't know what's up and what's down.
I hear something real, and I'm like, Thanos is Spider-Man's dad, and they're like, there's no way that that's true, but like people are like, well, maybe,
but maybe it is.
Right? The best spoiler I heard from this junior high kid, he said Aquaman drowns, which is funny on 2 levels, because Aquaman is DC and not Marvel, but also it's Aquaman. He cannot drown. Like that's ridiculous. So, you've gone on your rant, and
I did.
Like, I want to get into, because like I cannot stand it. I cannot stand it when people spoil things, because it's like these stories we are so connected with, especially ones like Star Wars, which comes out this year, 40 years in the making of this story. And this is the culmination of that. Marvel, like these characters have been with us since we were kids. And this one story has been with us since 2008, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to ruin that for somebody?
Because people who ruin that kind of stuff, they're bad people. And they get joy from other people's misery, and they're bad people. When you joke about it to torment other people, you're a bad person. You need to repent. You need to ask yourself, why does causing misery or anxiety in other people, why does that make me so happy? Why am I so empty inside that the only thing that fills me up is other people's pain? What does that say about me as a human being? That's the questions you need to ask yourself. Stop spoiling stuff. Take a look at your soul, see how dark it is, and turn to Jesus Christ. That's what you need to do if you're spoiling stuff for other people.
I love that this topic is the single biggest soapbox you've ever stood on the show.
It's such a small thing, but it's such a dumb thing for people to do. Like, I know it's just a movie and it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Absolutely fine. The fact that you want to ruin this innocent little joy for people, you're just a bad person. Just accept it, repent, turn to Jesus, and stop being a jerk face.
I think that's the big thing for me, is that it's seen as this little thing, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Then it's like, first of all, then why did you go see it opening night so that you can spoil it for everybody else? Because it was important to you too. And like, it's not like we are so connected to these stories and we love these characters. It's not just this simple thing. Like, it is deeper than that. It's not just spoiling a movie. It's, I want to ruin your life for a day. And it's like, that's dark. That's really dark. I told the junior high kids that I spoke to on Sunday night when I was talking to them about the book of Revelation, which we're going to talk about in a final segment of our show today. I told them that the book of Revelation says that there's a special place in hell for people who spoil movies. And they believed me because Revelation is so crazy. So that like 3 minutes later, I still see them staring at me. I was like, guys, I was kidding. It's not in there, but it is still true. Exactly. It was pretty crazy. So the last part about this that I want to talk about, like I like you even brought it up like in your dichotomy between like, yes, this last weekend was the biggest pop culture weekend, like that I can even remember, like probably ever. Yeah. But you're right. It was Divine Mercy Sunday weekend. Last weekend was Holy Week, which again, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like there's something every week. Yeah. And yet, like, it started out with a joke with our friend T with Tolkien. Like, she was like, you know, who's going to the vigil? And I'm like, I've gone to the vigil a ton of times. And I made this joke. Like, I meant it as a joke. They're like, oh, what's more important, Endgame or the vigil? And I'm like, well, like the vigil's reruns. Like, I've seen it multiple times. And like, this is new information. So like, I meant it as a joke. Fine. I don't actually mean that. But then I started thinking about it. It's like, there's something true in every joke. And there's something in me that it's difficult for me to do the same thing over and over again. Like even when it comes to movies, like I don't rewatch movies. If I rewatch something, it's like 10 years later. Like I'll rewatch Harry Potter series 10 years after I watched it the first time. I'll rewatch, you know, like we rewatch like Infinity War one time after like almost a year. Like I don't revisit things because I experienced them once. I have a fairly good memory. I remember my experience. I remember what happens. And then I move on to the next thing. And so it is difficult for me. I found this difficult. It's not usually this difficult, but like of these last 2 weeks, like I've already experienced Good Friday. I've already experienced Good Holy Thursday. I've already experienced Divine Mercy. Like I was more excited about like of Endgame, the Game of Thrones like season finale, like, and I felt bad about it, and I like what's going on, because there is some truth in that. But help me.
Yeah, so I think it's important to recognize that these are different things. Like Endgame is a spectacle. It's an event. It's this pure entertainment fireworks kind of deal. And so that thing lends itself more to this one-time kind of event, where the faith, like the Easter Vigil, that goes deeper than a one-time sort of spectacle. So you can go two ways with that. One, there is a temptation to let things in the Catholic faith become normalized and then uninteresting, and then we kind of drift away and we lose our zeal. The other side of that is I think we are invited to enter into those things in a deeper and deeper way. So a lot of times I think for families, like maybe when you were single and you like going to the Easter Vigil, that's good. But the best way for your family to enter into the Easter mystery is not the Easter Vigil. It's Easter morning. Right. And that's fine. That's I mean, if we didn't, you know, it'd be one thing if like we only offered Easter Vigil and people were doing like illegal masses somewhere else, right? There's a reason why the church offers these different times, because they're both good. I think it's just these are different events, because you don't want to. Actually, the problem is the people who compare the Easter Vigil to Endgame are making a one-to-one comparison. They're saying, "Oh, these things are both equal." It's like, no, they're not. They're totally different things.
Right.
So settle down. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's where the mistake's made.
And I think there's often, especially like in the Catholic world, there's this dichotomy. It's like you have to choose. You have to choose football or mass, or you don't love God enough. You have to choose Avengers, Endgame, or mass. And like, if you feel more excited about Endgame, then like you're a bad Catholic. and it's like, we have all these mass times. Like I can have it all. I can do both, right? Like because it's not sinful in and of itself. So I've just never liked that dichotomy of like,
Yeah.
I did. Like, we went to Easter Sunday and it was beautiful. I absolutely
Yeah.
loved it. And it was like, yes, this was another experience that I've had a ton of times before, but it was beautiful being there with my family and this like, celebration. Like, my 6-year-old it's new for him, And like, I'm answering questions that he has. And like, so there was that, but it's like, we also as Catholics have to be aware that like, it is ever ancient and ever new. And like, we come into every one of these situations as new people in new situations, but there is that ancient part of it. But we have to close by saying you definitely spoiled the ending of Easter. You did spoil the ending of Easter. Like, you definitely talked about it during Lent. So we have to chastise you for this later. So guys, here's what we are going to do. We are going to leave this conversation, and we are going to bring on my buddy, Mr. Ennie Hickman, to talk about possibly loving our neighbors. That's the thing we're supposed to do. So don't go anywhere. And I'm talking to you, Father Anthony. Don't go anywhere. Please, please don't leave. Welcome back to Forte Catholic, your home for hosts who have no voice. So he brings in the help of one of those priestly men, Father Anthony, still hanging out here today. And also, Mr. Ennie Hickman. Ennie, how are you this morning, my friend?
Doing great, brother.
Dude, it's nice to see you. So, Ennie, I've told you this before. I've looked up to you from afar for quite some time. You've worked in the Houston area where I grew up for most of your professional career. And we had a cool moment a few weeks ago where, like, I've been looking up to you. I've loved you for forever. I love how you speak. I love your ministry. And I was actually able to, like, work with you, which was strange and cool for me. It's like, hey, this guy I've looked up to for forever, I'm going to go, like, pick on a guitar behind him while he gives a talk. It was sweet, man.
The old noodling behind the prayer. It's how we manipulate people.
Exactly. Beautiful, beautiful manipulation that makes them fall in love with Jesus and question it 2 weeks later. I love it so much.
That was really real. That was impressively real.
So, yeah, Ennie, most people know you as a speaker. They know you also as a president of these ministries. But we have to talk like, we have to zoom in first. We have to zoom into this event that we had the other day, because I think you had this great point and a great opportunity to do something very special. And I want you to tell the story. So you got up to start this talk where you had about 30 or 40 minutes. Do you remember the story from the Gospels that you started with, that you led with?
Yikes. No, you got me, man.
Okay.
You got me.
Okay.
I mean, I like, truth be told, like, I have been giving, the same message for years at least, and what I mean by that is not the exact same stories, but I'm pretty sure I remember what I challenged them to. You tell me, what did I use?
Okay, so you led with this story of Jesus in the Gospels, where he gives a parable, and it's set up for this huge talk, and you shared the story of the parable, and then all Jesus does is share the parable, ask them a question, and walk away.
Oh, yeah.
And I legitimately thought that you drove all the way to this camp to share that parable and just walk off the stage.
Yes.
I thought it would have been like the most powerful thing ever.
No, yeah, Luke 8, parable of the sower of the seeds. It struck me years ago just how different Jesus preached than we do. We get up to, to entertain, to impress, the story, the big long deal. And it seems to me like when I see Jesus preach, he really just doesn't, he's not giving parables just so that, people are like, oh, okay, I get it. And actually he follows up by saying that he speaks in parables so that in hearing they may not hear, or in seeing they may not see. At the end of the parable, he says something really specific. He says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And then he goes on to tell the apostles, after they ask him, like, what did that mean? That they have been given to the kingdom. But for others, he speaks in parables so as to confuse them, basically. I use that as an illustration to share about how our desiring God and our desiring to know more of him is really the first step. It's the building block to understanding the Word of God, that we can't just, be taught the Word of God and not have ears to hear. So, yeah, I'm looking at that crowd at you're talking about St. Thomas High School.
Right. Where you went to
An
school.
all boys, yes, all boys Catholic school. No offense, Aaron Dominguez and everybody working hard over there to bring those kids to Jesus. But it's definitely one of the, if not the most difficult mission fields, I believe, in the United States. Shepherding sheep that believe that they're already in the flock.
Mm.
Right. I recall actually a singular moment, and I've shared this a few times with friends in that talk, saying something to the effect of like, hey, we're all in need. We're all in need. We have needs. We need these things. And I remember looking and just seeing blank stares like, nah, I'm not. Like, I don't have need. There's nothing I need. And I think that's that story. I shared that at the beginning, basically to open their ears to go like, wait a minute, do I want to know, or do I have a need? Do I have a desire for God? Because if you don't, I mean, there's not, you're not, and this is one of the greatest sort of diseases I believe in our culture and society, is that like, we get everything we could ever want and need. I call them the snacks of the world. The idea that there's just all these things that we can fill our bellies with, that we get the sense that we're not hungry anymore, or that we're just eating Cheez-Its rather than the feast, So that's sort of why I started out on that note, with that story. Yeah, Jesus does preach differently than I do.
And you know what? Like, you just gave me insight into Father Anthony, because his homilies and whenever he speaks, it is also very confusing and doesn't make any sense.
You have never heard my homilies.
I sure have. I stalked you on the internet.
No, I know. It does explain, however, my tweets. Now, whenever anyone wants me to explain my tweet, I'm just gonna be like, no. If you have eyes, you should see. I'm not explain anything to you.
See, you've actually already done this. One of your greatest moments on Twitter was last week, whenever you tweeted and somebody said, "Can you explain?" You said, "Say please."
Say please.
And then they said please, and you said no. I thought it was one of the most savage moments by a priest ever.
I have a question. I know it's maybe getting a little bit off topic, but just what you said, Ennie, really was making me think. Because when we say in talks things like everyone has a need, we experience that as like this universal truth. Like, all of our friends who are Christian have like come to this point where they realize that there's this need, that they feel empty. And then when you give that same information, when you bring that to those guys, they say no. Why do you think that happens? Or like, how do you awaken someone to a need they don't know they have, when it seems so obvious to us that it's just a part of the human experience? Like, it seems like a universal truth, but then you realize, wait, it's not. But is it? Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean, I think, like, obviously the human person is born and we need food and we need, water, and we need attention, and we need affirmation, and we need love, and we need community, and we need all these things. And I think when I was kind of going through that litany, that was, there was these blank stares, like, really? Like, I need love, like, I don't feel like I need, I need affirmation. I need these things. And yeah, I mean, I guess the older I get, right, the more that I know that I'm in need, more life experience I have, going, oh my gosh, like, that's why I do that, because I have this deep longing for love. So, I mean, I don't think I fully, I don't think I got that when I was a kid. But as far as universally understanding our need, I see that honestly as like the foundation of the whole thing. It's what unites us as human beings. This idea that we cannot do this on our own. There's no way we can do this on our own. And when we understand, and I love food, and I love the illustrate, and I love taking food as the, sort of the illustration of that, and just going like, you will not be able to survive without your mother at a certain point. And in the same way, that spiritual sustenance, we were unable to do this on our own. And I think that for the majority of, believers, Catholic or Christian or wherever you stand, there's this idea that, if I'm going to survive, or I'm going to make it to heaven, or I'm going to, be, a saint, this has everything to do with me doing it, right? And me filling all those, that checklist of this is what it means to be a saint. Yeah, the idea of kind of backing up and going, actually, this is very little to do with me, everything to do with my openness to what God wants to give me.
With those kids, it's interesting because it's like they don't have a lot of need for material things, and they can buy whatever they want, but like what they can't buy is forgiveness of sins. Like that's not a thing that they can buy, and it's like that's one of the only things. It's always the key to the gospel message.
Can't do that anymore.
Right. Well, maybe in a certain parish in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but other than that,
I don't accept bribes. I do accept gifts.
Gifts. You know that Father Anthony withheld absolution from me because I told him my sins on Xbox Live. I couldn't believe it. But
we're not there yet.
we all have this need that like we can't earn, we can't spend money for, we can't perform better for. And it's that great chasm between us and God because of our sin. And that's an interesting thing of that I think somebody shared that day of like you can't buy this. You can't get this because of your social standing. You get it by just asking for help.
Right. And when Catholic schools are filled with the elite and those that can buy everything else, that is just a foreign concept of like, wait a minute, what do you mean? You mean I can't just work hard to be a saint? I can't just do that all on my own? Yeah, it is sort of it's a foreign concept. I buy happiness all the time. My parents buy me happiness all the time. I think like I said, I think it's one of the most difficult mission fields out there. It's why I'm not there. Way too hard.
So let's talk about where you are, because you did see a need. We've been talking about need this whole time. You saw a need within the ministry field to go back to something more simple, something from back in the day, not out in front of people, but sitting on a porch. Tell us a little bit about Rey Collective and y'all's mission there.
Yeah, I think we just overcomplicate most things in the church. I think we love to just spend our wheels and our energy thinking about new systems and new projects and new programs. And, oh man, maybe this will do it. And let's create more t-shirts, like let's do all this stuff, and no offense again, podcasts or public ministry or speaking or all this stuff.
Sir? How dare you?
But really I'll pick on you if you want to. But the reality is, the system and the model it's already been given to us. And I had this experience where it was probably about 11 years ago where my son approached me after Mass. We were eating breakfast. My son approached me after Mass and asked me if we could go meet our neighbors. And my neighbors, of course, I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. I was out in the suburbs, and I was in front of 40, 50,000 people a year on stages, top of the ministry game, youth minister at St. Timothy's where Life Team was founded, and we were rock stars. My son said, "Can we meet our neighbors?" And I said, "Why?" And he proceeded to say, a Sunday school teacher told me that Jesus said we should love our neighbors. So I thought we should meet them. And it was one of those moments where I was like, say that again, buddy. Like, oh my God, like, wow. And it just always began to kind of roll in. The grace was present. We were already kind of like God was shaking the earth underneath us. I felt like our ministry life was on a collision course with our life. The amount of time just spent where we feel like we were spinning our wheels in these programs and all this stuff we were doing, walking off stage and just going, what happened there? Did I actually even do anything? And my son says this, and it just begins to occur to me like, what if when God said love our neighbors, he meant our neighbors? It's so it was so stupid. Here I was like, I'm studying for my master's and I'm like doing all this stuff and just going, wait a minute. What if, of course, Jesus meant, everybody's our neighbor, but everybody as our neighbor that's scary. It's almost impossible. And, so this idea of loving neighbors, our actual neighbors, the next door neighbors of people on our cul-de-sac or on our block, began to just flood my wife and I, like, that's what we did. And then this thought occurred to me that if everybody who was following Jesus actually commands seriously, Like that's actually something that could work, where if everybody in there, where they're planted, Mother Teresa, find your own Calcutta, or stay home, you want to change the world, stay home, love your family. This idea that it's a lot simpler than we make it, and a lot less complicated. And it's something possible for every missionary's disciple to do. If for every believer to say, oh, just love my neighbor, like just Jim and Susie, like that's it. That's all you want me to do. There's a sense of rest there. And so that's where the beginnings of Del Rey Collective came about, just this idea of empowering people just to not freak out because they don't know. Peter and the apostles, our theology is so much better than theirs. But yet we still believe, unless I know, I can't be a missionary disciple unless I this or this, or have some public ministry. And I believe that as public ministers, as people who are on stages or on podcasts, I believe we have the responsibility. And oftentimes we perpetuate this issue by giving this idea that the only way we can do ministry, or the only way you can lead people to Jesus, is by having some sort of platform, which is just not the case. It's just not the case. And in a lot of ways, folks who are doing the simple and loving their neighbors, whether that's at their work or their school or their actual neighborhoods, they're doing more effective work than we are sometimes, in that, we're just giving talks. The tough stuff, the really tough stuff, where the rubber meets the road, is when you are in an environment where people do not agree with you, and people or have a differing opinion about politics or religion or faith or stuff like that. That's where a lot of, that's where the missionary disciple meets the world. And so Del Rey Collective is about giving people tools and encouragement to do mission work in the everyday, not being afraid of that, but actually seeing that as that's right where Jesus is calling us. So for my wife and I, we still have this public ministry. If I was a garbage man, anything, we would still doing this thing. So 11 years ago, we began opening our home to our neighbors weekly. It's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy. There have been people who have come to the faith, and then there's been a lot of people who haven't. We had our Muslim neighbors. They, if it's 6 o'clock and the sun's going down, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it home, they go pray in our prayer room. Oh, that's fine. You can use the front room to pray. On the opposite end, neighbor, a few years back, that he came over and was kind of mad. He had been on my porch for 4 or 5 years, every week, having a beer, tattoos, face tattoos, everything. He's intimidating, to say the least. If you were to meet him on the street, he comes over and he's like, Ennie, I found you on YouTube. He's kind of mad. And I'm like, he's like, you're like a preacher guy. Like, what? You're like a preacher guy. He's like, when are you going to tell me about Jesus?
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Right. How about right now? Right now. So I think the desire, this consumerism, sort of more, all of these sorts of things, this kind of stuff is sort of crept in this country, that more equals more effective, right? Or that numbers are the most important thing, or that it has to happen fast, get rich quick. There's this get holy quick scheme that's just false. And, the witness of the Christian day in and day out, simple hospitality, simple kindness, loving smiles, things like that. They take a long time, and they're a lot less sexy than a conference, but they're effective. And I think that's what Del Rey Collective is about. It's just about going hey, let's encourage you in that small way.
Yeah, I love that so much. When we talked the other day, I was like, I think I'm going to be one of your arms. I think I'm going to go get on the website, sign up. And I think I need to tell my wife first, or ask my wife first, hey, you want strangers to come to our house? That'll be fun. We should love our neighbors too, because I was convicted when you said the story about your son telling you that the same way you were 11 years ago. So, hey, thanks for coming on, man. How can people get connected with Del Rey? You saw me and Father Anthony's face when you shared the story of your son. Hey, we should actually love our neighbors. How can people, what's the next step? How can they get involved with it?
Yeah, so Del Rey, it's spelled, it's Spanish.
Spanglish.
Or of the King. Spanish, Del Rey Collective, DELREY collective.com. It's called the Open Porch Network. And basically, we are a group of everyday disciples that are opening our porches to our neighbors. You can go on there, click the Open Porch Network, and learn more about how to get connected. Also, Father Anthony is now following me on Twitter, so you can follow along at ENNIE, the number 4, and I tweet occasionally.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Yeah,
you are
thanks,
the man.
guys.
Yep. All right, guys, we will be right back for our final segment where Father Anthony and I are going to talk about the Book of Revelation. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am your host without a voice, Mr. Taylor Schroll. And I am still joined by the co-host without a brain, Father Anthony Sharapa. So this, if nothing else, will prove that I plan content of the show. But most of the things like intros and stuff, totally made up. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I was going to say that until literally my brain was saying it with my mouth.
Yeah. So
how do you feel about this?
It's kind of revealing though, because like you didn't know where you were going to go. So you go back to like what you know best, right? Remember we were like stressed out. Okay, what do I know best? And the first thing you went to was like, let's just straight up out of nowhere insult Father Anthony. That's where you went.
It is embedded in the depths of who I am. And some people will say, that it's because of my fallen sinful nature. But what they don't know is that this is God's calling on my life to help you remain humble. This is actually my
definitely
service.
Deserve it, yeah.
It's a service to the church that I'm doing here. You know what else is a service to the church?
What else is a service to the church? Feeding
the poor, but that's not what we're talking about. We're going to talk about the Book of Revelation.
Yeah.
Okay, so this whole Book of Revelation thing. You're a priest, or at least that's what you've told me. What misconceptions have you come across in your ministry of people believing about the Book of Revelation?
Sure. I think the biggest misconception is that people don't treat it like scripture. They treat it like either a magic book or a book of codes. If somehow you break the magic code in the Book of Revelation, then you'll know exactly what day the end time is going to happen. And becomes this huge, it becomes about control and trying to not break open the Word of God in the sense of understanding it in a more deep way, but to crack the code. And I think that's where most people go wrong.
Yes.
They get obsessed with numbers and things and say, you're reading it the wrong way.
This is a mystery novel.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Yeah.
So I had this class when I was an undergrad called Apocalyptic Literature. And it was about, obviously the Book of Revelation was in there. We read a bunch of apocryphal stuff and a bunch of other religions' version of apocalyptic literature to then compare. We finished it up with all the Book of Daniel, the Book of Revelation, all the apocalyptic literature in the scriptures. And my favorite thing about this is all the misconceptions. And my favorite thing that I learned about in that class was all the people, like you said, that looked at all the dates and times and numbers, and they were like, the end is here, April 4th, 1772. And they all wait on a mountain. It doesn't happen. They're like, they go off in shame for a year, and then they come back and they're like, sorry, I did my math wrong. It's April 21st, 1776. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, you're an idiot. That's the truth. This isn't a book to help you have secret information that no one else has. This Bible, literally in the same Bible, it says, no one knows the hour that the end is coming, not even the Son.
Right.
He is God. You're not going to figure it out, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm smarter than Jesus. So, common misconceptions in here. Everybody focuses on, the dragon, the numbers, the 666, and the Armageddon and the rapture. This is crazy. I didn't know this until I was reading this book called Unlocking the Book of Revelation, and what it's actually about in a Catholic context. The number 666 is mentioned one time. The beast Like the mean old bad beast doesn't come in until chapter 13.
Yeah.
That's quite some time. And these two are my favorites because like you're old. You remember the Left Behind series, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I never read them, but I know what they are. Yeah.
Sure you didn't. So they're all about the rapture. Like, like God coming and like all the Christians disappearing and like crashing their planes into everybody that's left. And, like that's the rapture. And then there's like this whole, like the Antichrist will be there. You can read your notes there. Tell us how many times the word Antichrist and rapture appear in the book of Revelation.
Antichrist is a word that isn't even in the book.
And what about the rapture?
Rapture is a word that isn't even in the book.
Not even
0 times.
in there. It's like me walking up to you and telling you that Avengers Endgame is all about shepherding lambs. Like it's not in there. It's not even close. And it's like I'm trying to make this case that it's what it's all about.
Right.
And it really isn't. So like you said, it's people like the book of Revelation is at the end of the Bible. But like, typically like I know the Bible isn't like one straight narratively written book, right? But
Right.
God's a smart person and he put it at the end for a reason. Like you have to read the rest of it for it to make any sense at all, right? And because there's so many connections to the Old Testament and this sort of thing. We're going to get into this more over the next couple weeks, but I want to zoom in and talk about one thing first about the book of Revelation, about what it's actually about. So chapters 1 through 11, it's this vision that John has, and it's all about like revelation, like in the sense of like God revealing things, right? Like the book of Revelation, it's God unveiling new information about heaven, right? And the second part is all about these chalices being poured out, which is, like there's one for all these different things, and then there's going to be one person that does all the chalices, blah, 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 blah. It's all about Jesus coming back. That's the first thing.
Yep.
And then it's all about this heavenly liturgy, this heavenly celebration, right? Which is crazy because we need your priestly expertise. What are the two parts of Mass there, Father?
You have the liturgy of the word and the liturgy of the Eucharist.
Exactly. It's exactly how this book is set up. There's the liturgy of the word, God revealing things to John. And then there's all these chalices and these prayers and these praises with things like this. And I just want you to stop me when you understand something that this sounds like on earth, okay? This is John describing something that's happening in the heavens. Men in white robes, singing songs, incense, altars, chalices, high priests, vestments, consecrated celibacy, tabernacle, lampstands, cross, the sign of the cross, Gloria, Alleluia, holy, holy, holy. Lift up your hearts. Literally stop me at any time. Lamb of God, amen. Intercession of the angels and saints, silent contemplation, kneeling, singing praise, and the marriage supper of the Lamb. You did not stop me. I read the entire list.
It sounds like it's vaguely familiar. I'm
going to punch you in the throat.
No, it's all about what I'm going to do actually after we're done recording the podcast. I'm going to go celebrate Mass. This is all a bunch of stuff that happens and is involved in the holy sacrifice of the Mass.
Exactly. I'm so very proud of you. We all are. That's everyone applauding you for realizing this. This is me the entire time I was reading that list. That's how I felt throughout that entire thing. It's like, save me.
I saw how long the list was. I was like, I'm going to make him read the whole thing. I'm not going to say anything.
He's been making fun of me, and I know that his voice hurts, so I'm going to make him say a lot of words and just laugh in his face. Okay, we've got to make the point here. We got to land the plane. So
yes.
This all talks about Jesus coming back soon. This was written about 2,000 years ago. I wouldn't, like, if you told me, like, hey, we're out to eat, and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the restroom, I'll be back soon, and you didn't come back for 2,000 years, I'd be very confused. So was Jesus a liar? Like, no, he wasn't a liar. He said, I'm coming back soon. This is all about this liturgy of heaven meeting earth. Mm-hmm. And, like, we get to experience like a coming of Christ every time we go to Mass. Like, we get to experience him. We get to become one with him. It's freaking beautiful. I love it so much. And then it's also about like, hey, but for real though, like Jesus is coming back with like chariots of fire. You should probably shape up your life.
Exactly.
Final thoughts
when
from
it
Final
happens,
Anthony.
when it happens, it's gonna feel soon. Like, oh my goodness, this is already happening.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't
Exactly.
ready.
Like, oh, well, it was soon, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the next time you go to mass, it's not just this thing like we talked about earlier that, oh, you have done this so many times. Like it's literally the time that heaven meets earth, and it is so beautiful. Speaking of beautiful, we have to say goodbye to our listeners. We have to say goodbye to Father Anthony, who looks just like Rob Stark. We love you so much, Padre. You are the best.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Father Anthony is going to leave us for a month, but I will be back next week. See ya! Father Anthony, I'm really concerned that you haven't made any friends yet. Are you okay?
Me too. I mean, I'm a little sad.
Well, I can't help you there, but I can help the other people. Join a community of just the most amazing people in the world over at patreon.com/Forte. I think it's Forte. Do you know? I don't know. Patreon.com/Forte Catholic. That's how it goes. I'm, like you said earlier in the show, I'm a professional. Yes. And I know how to do things. So there's all kind of bonus content, things that we didn't have time for on the show, things that we literally couldn't say on the show because Taylor would get fired. That's all over at patreon.com/Forte Catholic. If you want more Father Anthony, and if you want to finally help him be a friend, you can pay for that privilege at patreon.com/Forte Catholic. Please help me feed my children.